Women and children have always been among the most vulnerable in our society. A home should be the place, the safest place for everybody. A family is where we find love, comfort, and security. Sadly, as we see this time and time again, that is not the case for many in our society. As families were cooped up in their homes during the lockdown, the world saw a surge in domestic violence. Our religion, our faith, is built on justice, compassion, mercy, and as our beloved Prophet, peace be upon him, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reminded us, the best of you are the ones who are the best to their families. And I am the best to my family. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm your host, Taha Ghayur, with another episode of Canada Today on Muslim Network TV. You can watch us live on the muslimnetwork.tv website, as well as on YouTube channels and Facebook channels as well, or Facebook pages as well. The recent increase in domestic violence compelled the world leaders to speak out. Spain, for instance, saw a surge in domestic violence by 18%. In China, crisis calls tripled from previous years. France saw an increase of 36%, and the UK saw a surge of 25% in domestic violence calls. The United Nations called for an urgent action to combat worldwide surge in domestic violence. Today, we wanted to touch upon a topic that many people shy away from. It is a taboo topic often in our community, in our society. But as you know, on Canada Today, we always want to highlight critical causes that are part of our society, part of our community, things that we need to address no matter how taboo they may be. So with me today, we have experts from the fields of mental health as well as domestic violence. Zaina Chaudhry is the CEO of Sakina Homes, a group sheltering projects for Muslim women and children. After completing her Master of Laws in Human Rights Law, she saw the need for grassroots and community-based services. Sakina Homes started 3 years ago to not only open shelters and transitional homes for Muslim women and children, but also do remote casework and help anyone who needed this kind of help across Canada. They changed the shelter system from what has always been to what they saw their clients or the residents needed. Instead of asking or saying, come to us and we'll tell you how you will deal with this or how we can help you. They have said and they have been saying, we will come to you and you tell us how you need to be helped. So since their inception, they have assisted thousands of women and children across Canada with anything from shelter, housing, legal assistance, counseling, reconciliation, and anything else that they may require. So thank you for joining Sister Zaina today.
Assalamu alaikum, Jazakallah khair for having me on the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. And Khalid Center Canada is a leading name in a place for psychological as well as spiritual community wellness, advancing in the principles of psychology rooted in Islamic principles. With us today is Fatima Mullah, who is a counselor at the Khalid Center Canada. She deals with mental health and addiction challenges faced by individual clients, facilitates support groups, and conducts various workshops in the community. Khalid Center Canada is the first Muslim health clinic of its kind in Toronto, devoted to providing services that use evidence-based, traditional spiritual approaches to psychological treatment. Welcome to our show, Fatima.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me here today.
You're welcome. Welcome. Assalamu. Thank you for joining. Well, Sister Zaina, we'll start with you. You were interviewed on a couple of for a couple of newspapers CBC as well as Toronto Life not that long ago about the increase in calls during the lockdown period by women experiencing domestic abuse. Would you tell us the average number of calls you guys were receiving before the lockdown started and after? And if yes, how what made you? What were some of the, I guess, the types of calls you were receiving, especially during the lockdown?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Before the lockdown, I would say on average across Canada, we received anywhere from 20 to 30 calls a week. Sometimes more than that, sometimes a little bit less than that. But after the lockdown began, so I would say mid-March, or even probably the second week of March, we saw those numbers rise and steadily rise and rise and rise until I would say maybe like a week or two ago when they started kind of like plateauing, up to even 300, 400 calls a week. And this was not only calls of people who necessarily were experiencing a rise in domestic violence in the home, but people who are witnessing it and their friends or families, people who needed help with food insecurity, people who needed help with mental health counseling. So basically anything you could imagine that we provide, we were getting calls regarding that. Legal, people were looking for legal services that they could talk to about the issues they're going through. People who were being abused even before the pandemic hit. Now that abuse was either more often or it was becoming more violent in nature. So they were basically trying to look for a safety plan to be made with them on how to pass through this time, because a lot of them had kids and they didn't necessarily want to leave at that exact moment, but they kind of want to figure out how to safety plan for the time being.
Mm. And how was your experience, Fatima, at the Khalid Center?
It was quite similar to that, and we saw a spike in mental health and domestic violence cases kind of rise. A lot of individuals, they had, started to experience exacerbated symptoms of either their anxiety, their depression, or they were going through really difficult challenges at home. And so I would say I don't know the exact number of clients or calls. However, we did definitely see an increase in our services during this time. And we've been working from home, so we've been doing our counseling through video therapy, and it's really seen a spike.
Thanks for sharing, both of you. I mean, and that's of course unfortunate, even though it's quite predictable considering what the numbers we were seeing across the world. Zaina, I was wondering, do you have an idea? Do you track the percent, the types of calls you're receiving, and more specifically, what percentage of total calls you're receiving were actually related to domestic abuse of some form?
Yeah, no, we do track. So on average, it's actually been pretty on par with what our average has been since our inception. And so that's about 95 to 96% of the calls that we receive are about domestic abuse in some way. So that can be either physical violence, emotional, mental, psychological, financial. So anything along those lines. And even during the pandemic, I would say it accounted again for about 95 to 96% of the calls that we were getting.
I see. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really unfortunate. So in some places, like if in Canada, they're reporting 400% increase. And now hearing your numbers, I'm not actually surprised. You're talking about 20 to 30 calls per week, and you're talking about how many calls you said you're receiving?
Like about 300.
300 calls per week.
300 plus, yeah.
And almost 90% of those were actually domestic violence related. Yeah. So this is a really, really unfortunate turn of events, of course, especially for those who are now really the most vulnerable, people who are supposed to be in the safest places and spaces, unfortunately. I wanted to know how are you dealing with the issue of underreporting? Now, these are the calls you're receiving. And of course, the good thing is you're receiving these calls because both of you and your centers are receiving these calls because you maintain privacy, people feel comfortable calling anonymously. But do you believe that there's still underreporting happening? And maybe I'll start with Fatima.
Yes, definitely. It's a known fact that kind of in the pandemic, it's created a lot of, I guess, just a very much dangerous kind of situation for a lot of women, children, individuals at home where it's not safe. And so it's not like oftentimes you're being monitored. So it would be really difficult to have, let's say, a counseling conversation at home. And so a lot of clients that would previously come to the center because, they were, supposed to be at work, or maybe they were supposed to be, out shopping, and they come to maybe come to their counseling session or their therapy session, they wouldn't be able to do that anymore because now they're at home and they don't really have kind of an escape from. Therefore, they wouldn't be able to kind of access services during this time. So I've noticed it in that. Additionally, like I can just imagine, how many individuals are struggling right now that don't have, again, that access for various reasons, right? Perhaps they're being monitored. Maybe there are, cameras in the home that kind of watch kind of everyone in the house to know, what might be going on kind of during the day. And so they don't really have that safety to be able to reach out and to seek the assistance that they may require.
Interesting. How about you, Sister Zainab?
No, I think definitely underreporting, especially in regards to domestic abuse and violence, has been rampant across the world, for years and years and years. And I don't think that this pandemic has been any different. We've seen, people, and underreporting happens because people don't think anything will come of it and things will just get worse. So, we have people who called us a safety plan and said, we're not going to call the police because what can they possibly do right now? Like, we don't want to go live in a shelter. We don't want to leave where we are because of our kids and the pandemic, and we don't want to get COVID. And then we have those people whose family or friends called us and said, we know they're going through this, but they're not going to reach out because they think that things will just get better while they've been at home, and it's been going on for decades. So underreporting is an issue in itself, and it's definitely like physical distancing and social distancing has not made it easier, definitely, for people to get help.
Very interesting. I mean, I'm sure many of us probably didn't think of this new sort of layer of I guess and new dynamics that were created by the whole lockdown itself, where a lot of people who were able to actually find sort of safer spaces outside are not able to even do that anymore, to be able to make phone calls even. And again, these are kinds of sort of blessings that we actually take for granted, unfortunately. This, at least the freedom that many people had before, that now, of course, unfortunately, they didn't, and especially the most vulnerable of communities. Do you think, in addition to the perceptions that you just talked about and the physical limitations now during the lockdown, are there any cultural barriers that are preventing from people, and women in particular, from reporting domestic violence abuse cases? Of course, beyond the pandemic, of course, even.
Yeah, if I don't,
go ahead.
On my mind, if I start,
Yeah.
No, definitely. We had so many people, and I think one phrase, it's said in many different ways, but I think I can chalk it up to this: is there's so many women who come to us and they say, and we ask, when did the abuse start? And sometimes they say it started like 18 years ago, and we say, why has it taken you so long to get the help that you need? And it's because when they contact their family or their friends, and they tell them this is happening, their mothers or their fathers or their siblings, what always comes out of their mouth seems to be something along the lines of, we'd rather you be dead than be divorced. So I think the problem lies within the cultural context of how we perceive marriages and women's roles in marriages to be. And because we kind of rely on them to be the backbone of, a family setting, they feel like they need to go through this, and this is their test, and the way to pass this test from God is to stay and be as strong as they possibly can. However, they don't realize that many times that test, what they can do from that is save themselves and their kids from the fate that they're in right now. So definitely cultural issues take a huge role in this, and a huge role in why women stay in the situations they're in, and even why sometimes abusers abuse. We've spoken to many abusers of the women who have come to us, or even the kids that have come to us, and usually their excuse is, this is, well, this is what's permitted, like, we do it back home, and this is just the way things are done. And they try to use Islam or religion as their crutch, but we all know that, there's no space for this in Islam. So what it actually does boil down to is cultural issues and how they perceive that and what they've been taught, and even, to be honest, what they've seen growing up. So if they see something being done and it's never been questioned while they're growing up, they're going to do the same thing again and then wonder why it's being questioned when they're doing it. So definitely cultural issue, cultural standpoint definitely takes a huge space in this field, and why people do what they do and why people stay in the situations that they're in as well.
Well, certainly the lockdown, of course, did not help the situation. That's the sad part, and that's where we saw things really compounding, unfortunately, the problem of domestic violence.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Fatima, would you like to chime in or add anything to this?
Yeah, that was actually really great. And I think the one thing that I would maybe add is that perhaps they have reached out in the past, and it wasn't, they didn't receive the response that they were hoping to receive, perhaps, right? So maybe they reached out to, someone in the community. Maybe they reached out to a friend or a family member who kind of, perpetuated, I guess, this idea that you should be more patient, or that you should go back and try once again, right? That things can get better if, I don't know, if you try something else, right? Like all these things that are not true, because like the sister said, right, these things have been going on for a very long time, and if it were to be resolved, it would have happened quite a while back. It's not a matter of patience. I think it's more a matter of just kind of acting on the safety of the individuals that are involved.
Well, this is a good segue into an interesting and I would say sad comment that we came across recently from a world leader, and you may have come across this before, where when the whole point stats about the issue of domestic violence rise was brought up recently. One of the Malaysian ministers advised women to put on makeup and don't argue with their husbands to avoid conflict. That was basically his solution to avoid and curb domestic violence cases. Fatima, in your experience, and of course from your own perspective, why is this problematic?
Oh, this is very problematic for a lot of reasons, right? I think it kind of ties into what I was just talking about, right? Having officials or having people in power kind of tell you that you need to be more patient, or you just need to wear makeup, or, it's essentially victim blaming, right? It's telling you that, it's your fault that this is happening, but if you change all of these things, then perhaps, you won't be in this situation, which is completely wrong, right? It's I think it perpetuates a lot of this kind of these stereotypes, these stigmas against reaching out and getting help and painting. I guess it's like it's all on the woman, right? Like if you wear good makeup and you look great all the time, or if you just don't complain and you just are kind of submissive, right? Then everything will be okay. But in reality, it's not dependent on what the person that is being abused is doing. It's really just the abuser choosing to act in ways that put this other individual in harm's way and to hurt them, right? They're really just trying to get that power and that control, and it won't be solved or fixed by putting on makeup or by being submissive or by doing everything that he tells you to, or if it's a male that's being abused and she tells you to, right? It's really problematic in that it really blames the victim and puts kind of the onus on the victim to try to change their behaviors to almost solve this problem, when in reality it goes beyond that. It's more the perpetrator of that violence that is choosing to act in these ways to harm the other individual. And yeah, it's very problematic.
Well, thanks for sharing that. How about you, Zaina? What do you think about this statement?
No, absolutely, I agree with what Fatma said. It's victim blaming, and you pretend like taking 2 items, saying put on makeup, like look nice, and stop nagging is going to fix things. But people who are abusers are going to abuse regardless of what you do. regardless of how much effort you put in, regardless of what you try to do to make their life easier. People who are abusers will just abuse because that's what they are and that's who they are, not because of anything that the victim or the survivor has done. And, that can lead, if you put makeup on and you don't nag, but the kids are too loud, or they've made a mess, or you haven't done the laundry properly, or there's too much salt in the food, or there's not enough salt in the food, or, you didn't call their mom, or you called their mom too many times. So there's a lot, of excuses that are used. And by saying that, just alleviate the need for these excuses, why is the onus being put on the woman to not be abused when the norm should be that there should not be abuse in the first place?
Very well said. Thank you for sharing that. Now, if we flip things, and I'm wondering, how many cases, and you, Zaina, maybe you may not be dealing with it directly because you deal with women's shelters, but maybe I'm wrong, but women's shelter homes or women's homes. Fatima, I'm wondering, how often do you guys deal with cases of domestic violence where the abused is actually male rather than female?
It does happen. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's very low. I think it's not that there are not males that are being abused. I think that there is an underreporting of that. There's a lot of stigma against speaking out, against talking about abuse if you are a male. And I think even within like mental health, right? I think it's really underreported, kind of the numbers of men that struggle with some of these issues, only because they're not really talking about it, right? We do have clients that are male that have gone through instances of domestic abuse, and it can look similar to how it looks for if a woman were to be abused, right? Again, the using of religion, family, children, all of those as tactics to kind of have power over another individual, and it can really happen to males and females. But I would say the numbers are really underreported.
I see. I was wondering, Zaina, have you been receiving calls, I mean, before or even during pandemic from children or from youth? And actually that goes for both of you, but I'll start off with Zaina, involving domestic violence cases in the family.
No, absolutely. I mean, since inception, about 3 years ago, we've been getting calls since then of, our youngest person who's ever called us was a 14-year-old girl who was abused she said, from since she can remember, by her brother and her father. So, we've been receiving calls so much from youth, and during the pandemic, even more so now, that percentage has risen as well. And that is actually what led us to start the project, and we're working with the ministry right now to get the licensing to open up the first group youth home for Muslim youth in Canada. So that's something that we're working on currently with them, to ensure that youth who need a place to go and it's not safe for them at home don't end up in non-Muslim foster homes, but instead end up in a Muslim environment, or with we can try and start recruiting Muslim families to foster these children so that they're in that type of environment growing up. But definitely that call number has risen during the pandemic, but we have gotten calls even before then, and especially right after we launched our project last year, we got a huge number of calls coming in from that. So we do work closely with the ministry. We work with regional children's aid societies as well to kind of alleviate that problem and try to find short-term solutions before we open up our group home. But we definitely are focusing on that because women are vulnerable, but they still have a right to choose and have the ability to choose where they live, where they go, where they work, whereas youth really don't have a choice. You're in the hands, if you're not with your parent or guardian, you're in the hands of the government, and they kind of choose where you're going to live and what you're going to do, which school you're going to go to, which region you're in. So, we definitely need to protect our youth a lot right now. And, it's unfortunate of the number of calls we've been getting, but we have been getting those.
That's a topic that needs to be explored in and of itself in much more detail. But I would be curious to hear from Fatima as well on this. See what kind of calls from youth and kids you're receiving.
Right. I would say it's similar. Like I really agree with that. Children, a lot of time, youth and children don't have kind of the autonomy to make decisions on their own, and so unfortunately, they are left to kind of just go along with the decisions that have either been made by their parents or by other, officials. The kinds of cases that I think seen is, again, like for me, it's mostly being, challenges with having really toxic home environments and just having to kind of be stuck there and just live with that. I'm thinking mental health. So I think there have been a lot of increases in a lot of youth experiencing anxiety or depression for the first time, kind of due to being at home in lockdown, just not really having their social supports, not having, their friends that they can talk to, not having the routines that they usually have that really help them to maintain and promote their mental health, like going to school, right? Right now they have online learning, and that's really challenging, something that, they couldn't really have prepared for. And so they kind of feel almost isolated in their struggle with, school, the challenges at home, not having their support systems, perhaps feeling these symptoms of anxiety, depression, right? And really just all of that kind of together being a lot for them to deal with. And that's something that I have seen a lot, and I've seen increase as, we've been in this pandemic and as we continue to go through this pandemic.
Okay. Well, thank you once again for sharing all this. I'm wondering, Zaina, how are you guys dealing with shortage of space? I'm assuming during the pandemic, of course, not only because of the number of calls, a surge in number of calls, but also I'm assuming there are limitations due to the physical distancing rules as well. So how are you dealing with the surge and when it comes to serving those who actually need those homes and spaces?
No, yeah, so that is a good question. And, we all know physical distancing right now is in full effect. You stand 6 feet apart waiting outside of Walmart for about 2 hours before you can get in. But with shelters, we've recently opened our Brampton location. During COVID, we opened it. Then we are opening a new location in Ottawa because we've seen a huge rise there. And that's been steadily through the 3 years, especially during the pandemic. We actually moved a Toronto location a few weeks ago to a larger location so that we can house more. Because, if you regularly can have 3 people in one room, you should only be having 2 maximum, because you need that bed space between to kind of, mitigate the 6 feet of distance that you do need in this scenario. We do make sure everyone is healthy when they're coming in, although they can be asymptomatic as well. So we understand that. So we have rooms set aside, the 2 rooms that are for people who have just moved in, and they stay in those rooms, and the food gets sent to the front door so that they don't have to come in and out and, kind of interact with everybody else living in the home. Sakina Homes, we do something a little bit different than other shelters, and we've been doing this since we started. We actually have remote casework as well. So across Canada, we get calls from people who either need emergency housing or long-term housing, and we put them up before we can find them long-term housing in a hotel or motel. And that's really helped us. That system that we've created 3 years ago has really helped us during this time, because we've put a lot of people up in motels and hotels who are, either symptomatic or asymptomatic, don't feel comfortable moving into a shelter because they have children and are worried for their safety. So definitely, that the space is an issue. But alhamdulillah, we had that system in place for a few years now, working remotely and putting people up in hotel and motel rooms that are, basically not shared with anybody else, so that they're able to be in there during this pandemic. So alhamdulillah, we have seen support for that as well. We've had donors who have come forward and said, we'd love to help with this area of what you guys do. So alhamdulillah, it's worked out, because we have a lot of families that have called us for that, specifically saying, we want to leave, but our child is immunocompromised or has a respiratory illness, and we can't move into a joint home, transitional home setting. So that's definitely what we utilize there. So, it's definitely made things a little bit more complicated, but alhamdulillah, we've been able to make it work thus far.
It's amazing, mashallah, how you guys have scaled your operations, especially during pandemic. So congratulations for stepping up. That's amazing. How about you, Fatima? How has COVID-19 affected your Khalid Center Canada's operations, other than, of course, being virtual now? Probably majority of your work is probably virtual. What kind of adjustments you guys had to make?
Right. We have gone virtual. We're doing all of our therapy through our video platforms, and we do individual therapy with families, and we also do support groups. And we've had, I believe, 3 support groups since this pandemic started, alhamdulillah, for various age groups, for I think depression, anxiety, and I'm running a support group for high school students just to help cope with anything that might be going on for them during this time. So it's kind of an open discussion where they just have the support that they might need just to be able to kind of share what might be going on for them. So alhamdulillah, we've had all of that. And also, in addition to that, because we've been home, we've actually seen a surge in the number of cases that we've had. In just this Ramadan, we've had about 449 clients across our offices. And so that's a lot. That's about 16 people a day who spent about like an hour with a therapist. And we were able to do that all kind of through web therapy and online. And it's actually been really great that this has kind of opened up, opened up our services to clients outside of Ontario or the GTA region. So people can actually now just have video therapy from across Canada, which is really excellent. And so for us, alhamdulillah, it's been really good, right? I think the video platform has really opened up the amount of clients that we can see and from like various regions, which we had previous to this pandemic as well. However, we weren't utilizing it as much, we found. And now that we are utilizing it, I think clients and clinicians are finding that this is a good way to provide therapy. And it's been working really well.
Well, thanks so much for being there for the most vulnerable in our communities. Both of you have been really, really a source of inspiration in the work you guys are doing. And it's good to see that you guys are, nimble and flexible and able to sort of evolve to serve the needs of our community. And that's when you really know whether, when an organization is truly serving the community or just sort of stuck in their old ways of doing things and just keep doing things the way they want. And this is really good to see. So thank you for doing that and showing this leadership to our community. And I wish 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, we had these kind of services when many of us were dealing with so many young people and their families, of course, going through some very, very challenging times. So alhamdulillah, this is beautiful. Wanted to bring this to an end. Unfortunately, time is limited. And there's so much to talk about. I mean, subhanAllah, this topic it never ends, and there's so many angles to it. There's so many dimensions to this topic. And that's why we're just sort of doing a pulse check at this point, really, on this issue. I wanted to, end with by asking you, first of all, if you can share, both of you, share maybe 2 pieces of advice you would give to anybody who is going through, some form of domestic abuse right now. What are 2 things or 2 or 3 things they should be doing and keeping in mind, other than, of course, all sorts of junk advice we hear, of course, online. I mean, what are some practical things that you can do as a person who's going through a difficult, challenging time right now? Zaina, you can start us off, and then Fatima.
Sure. I think the first thing I would say is find supports that you trust. That can be friends, that can be family, that can be a social worker, that can be someone from a shelter, that can be someone, your therapist, that can be your doctor, someone that you support. Use them. Tell them what happens. Use them. Make sure that you're recording what's going on, whether it's not something that you keep at home so that your abuser can find it. But even with, your family member or your friend, whoever your trusted source is, make sure that they're recording as well for you for future use. And the second thing I would say is safety plan. So whether you're planning on leaving an abusive situation or not, safety plan while you're in that situation, what you can do. If you have children, make sure that your children are away from the abuse. If they're in the room when you're being abused, make sure you're getting the kids out of there, or you're leaving yourself. Make sure that you have things set away so that if you are leaving, you know what you're taking with you, what valuables, what paperwork you need to take with you. So just make sure that you have all your bases covered. And, if you think that no one is going to be there supporting you, you'd be surprised. Someone is definitely going to be there. You're going to find, even the people that you would never expect to be there for you, they will be there for you. So just try and reach out to people that you trust to be your support services here.
Great, thank you. How about you, Fatima?
I was going to say both of those, but now I'm just going to try to come up with some more on the spot. So, I mean, we're in a very, special time right now. It's very, challenging. It's really different from the normal. And I think it's important to really kind of take care of yourself, kind of, reach out to those supports. Yes, safety plan, but also really remember that self-care is very important, right? In order for, you to do all of these things, it's really important for you to be able to check in with yourself and to just really take care of yourself, right? Whether that's getting enough sleep, trying to stay as healthy as possible, trying to get exercise, trying to make sure that, you're, if you're able and if it's safe, right, to leave the home for just a little bit, even if it's for a walk, right? Let's say like a 30-minute walk just around the neighborhood, of course, following all the protocol to remain safe. So self-care, and then I would also say, to reach out to supports, right? It's really important to talk to others. Reach out if you feel like, to people that you feel are safe. Let them know what's going on. Let them know what's going on, that, you're able to share and you're comfortable sharing, even if you're in a situation where you are being monitored. There are ways to reach out without kind of letting your abuser kind of be, I guess, known to the fact that you are trying to reach out for these supports. Okay. So reach out for the supports and really just engage in as much self-care as possible.
What advice would you give to our community leaders and our imams? They are the ones in positions of authority and influence. How they should be either dealing with such issues or at least raising awareness about such issues of domestic violence. So maybe Zaina, you can start us off.
Sure. I would say number one is educate yourselves. I am not an expert. I'm not an imam. I'm not, nothing. And people who would come to me with those kind of questions, I would refer them to an expert. And I would say the same thing for our imams, our sheikhs, our mulanas, that if you're not expert in a topic like mental health or domestic violence or abuse, please refer those out to people who are experts, or educate yourselves. Going back to school, we have imams and sheikhs now who are also social workers, who are certified counselors and therapists. And so either, educate yourselves internally or about the resources that are out there, so you can make those proper referrals and ensure that the people who are coming to you are getting the help that they need. I think that's our biggest roadblock here, so that leaders, there's no shame in saying that I don't know, I'm not an expert. Here's someone who is, though. So definitely making that list of resources, and and even internally we share them through organizations. We share resources with whoever asks. So even reaching out to people and saying, do you have a resource for this specific geographical area for this type of thing? And you will find that people will usually have somewhere that you can refer people to. So definitely I think those are our biggest things here.
Great, thank you. And how about you, Fatima?
Right. So in addition, I agree with that, right? To educate themselves on the resources that are available, but also to share those resources, right? So when they are doing talks, right, we've had lots of, masajid that have done virtual sermons or, like talks during this time. Talk about some of these resources, talk about some of these issues that are going on in our community, so that the individuals that are really afraid to speak out, they feel comfortable speaking out because they know that, the issues they're going through are being understood, they're being heard, and that, that it's actually being promoted that people should reach out and seek support and shouldn't be struggling on their own and shouldn't be suffering at home the way that they are.
Excellent. If somebody is in need now and they want to reach out to Khalid Center for mental health, advice, or they're going through a domestic violence, situation at this point, how can people reach Khalid Center and learn more about your services? What would be that one number they will call, or that one click they're gonna have to click on a link on they would click on? What would that be, Sister Fatima?
So to reach out to Khalil Center, you can go to khalilcenter.com. And on our website, you will see all of our services. In addition to that, there's a red button that says book an appointment, and you can ask to book an appointment. All you have to do is put in any safe numbers or any other safe contact information that we can reach you at. And if there's no safe information to reach you at, also kind of write that down in the notes where we have it kind of in the form to let us know. And our admin will reach out to you within 24 to 48 hours and can set you up with an appointment. Now, the next thing that a lot of people are worried about is the fees that we have. I wanted to kind of let everybody know that we really focus on services over fees. We have financial assistance options available to help individuals out that cannot afford our services. And oftentimes, a lot of individuals that are going through domestic violence situations, they receive their therapy completely free of charge from Khalil Center or at a very, very low cost.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's very helpful. Appreciate that. Zaina, how about you? What number they would call?
Our number is 1-888-671-3446. And also, if phone numbers don't work, we are launching a text service now as well. So that if you are going through abuse, you can text that number, and they will either respond to you through text or figure out how best to communicate with you. Because, like Fatima had mentioned earlier on, there's situations now in the home where you can't even reach out for help because you're basically around even the abuser 24/7. So having this service, we think, will alleviate some of that pressure that people are feeling and some of that anxiety they're feeling around reaching out and that uncertainty. We also have a contact form on our website that people can fill out. And then from there, we'll either refer it over to our in-house managers, our caseworkers, our case manager for remote casework. We have free counseling as well. So either to our counselor or to whichever service that you require from us, whether it's immediate housing or something long-term. So definitely our website and our phone number are the two best ways to get in contact with us.
Well, that's awesome. And as much as I would love to talk more about this issue, and there's so much more that needs to be discussed, it is a heavy topic. And it is going to be an ongoing conversation. So we really appreciate you both coming out and spending the time this afternoon on the Canada Today show. And we hope that both the abused and the abusers learn something from it, as well as the support teams and the support family and the support systems and the people and the families that are out there that are either part of this or that are there to support. They learn something from this, inshallah. And we ask God to support and help those who are going through very difficult times in their own homes and alleviate their suffering. And we ask God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to guide the abusers. And we ask Allah to support, of course, people like you who are doing an amazing job, doing your best, alhamdulillah, to support the most vulnerable in our communities, in our societies. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you strong and help you keep serving those who are in need all the time. So wanted to personally and sincerely thank you for being here this afternoon with us. And with that, we want to, of course, also thank our production team, Sister Nergis Naqvi, as well as Saliha Farouk, as well as our community partners like Dawanet and TorontoMuslims.com for helping us produce and promote this show. Once again, I am Taha Ghayur from Canada Today show at MuslimNetwork.tv. Thank you for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.